Welcome back to the Wind Up with Will, everyone. I'm your host, Will, here with another episode. And today we're going to be talking about the National Baseball Hall of Fame. I want to do this video for several weeks now. I've just not had time to sit down and do it. And with the Super Bowl going on and the Four Nations, just there's been a lot of stuff going on. I've just not been able to sit down and do this. And with the Super Bowl over, we're in full football is over now. We're in full swing of college basketball, the NBA, NHL, their playoffs are coming up, and the start of baseball is happening, which is I'm so excited for. And I want to have some videos that are talking about the off season acquisitions for teams, especially my Mets. There's some big acquisitions for them. And I'm just excited as a whole for baseball this season. I'm ready for warmer weather in baseball. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get in this video real quick. But I want to briefly talk about the Four Nations face-off Thursday night. I made a prediction saying Team USA would win against Canada in the final, that I thought they were the two best teams. Those two teams met in the final and ended up meeting again for a rematch. And Canada won 3-2 in overtime. It was a great game. It was classic. They got revenge. It felt like at times the U.S. was going to win. It was a great game all around. Canada won 3-2 in overtime. Connor McDavid slaps home the winner. He was player of the game, and then the player of the tournament was Nathan MacKinnon, his teammate. So it was a great tournament, and I want to do another video at some point that just talking about the Four Nations and hockey as a whole, international hockey as a whole. But for right now, we're going to get into what this video is supposed to be about, and that is the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, I want to go through briefly, I had to make sure my door was shut there. I want to go through briefly the players who were on the ballot this year, and I'm looking at something that has the voting results, but I'm going to read through the players that are on the ballot, and then personally who I would vote for, and then how the ballot actually turned out. So the players that are on this ballot, we'll start, well, I guess I'll just read, it doesn't really matter what order I read them in. Ichiro Suzuki, CC Sabathia, Billy Wagner, Carlos Beltran, Andrew Jones, Chase Utley, Alex Rodriguez, Manny Ramirez, Andy Pettitte, Felix Hernandez, Bobby Abreu, Jimmy Rollins, Omar Vizquel, Dustin Pedroia, Mark Burley, Francisco Rodriguez, David Wright, Mr. Met there, Captain America, Torrey Hunter. Then we've got Ian Kinsler, Russell Martin, Brian McCann, Troy Tulowitzki, Curtis Granderson, Adam Jones, Carlos Gonzalez, Hanley Ramirez, Fernando Rodney, and Ben Zobrist. So I'm going to go through briefly who I think, out of those players listed that are eligible, who I think should go in the Hall of Fame, who I would have voted for if I personally had a vote. So personally, I would have voted for, I'm going to check, make sure my camera's still rolling. I had to click on the article that had the players listed. I'm just going to go through briefly who I say briefly, it might take a minute. I'm going to try and list some of their accolades and why I would vote for them. So right off the bat, I'm going to go with Ichiro Suzuki. He was one of the best players of his era. He's just slam dunk. He came out. He ended up. Well, I'll wait. I'll save that for a minute. He was a phenomenal player. His first year in Major League Baseball, he was 27 years old because he played in Japan for so long before he was able to come to America. So he was 27, and he won Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season. He holds the record for most hits in a season with 262. He holds the record for the most hits over the first 10 years of a career with well over 2,000. I believe he also holds the record for most consecutive years with 200 hits with 10. His first 10 years in MLB, he had over 200 hits. He led the league in hits 7 times. He won the batting title twice. He led the league in stolen bases once. He ended up with over 3,000 career hits, and if you combine with his hits in Japan, he has over 4,000 hits. He had over 1,400 runs scored. He had only 117 home runs, but he wasn't a home run guy. Career batting average over 300, batted 311. He was a 10-time All-Star, a 10-time Gold Glove winner. He won Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season. And he is the first Japanese-born player. I'll go ahead and say this. He was the first Japanese-born player to be elected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Really cool of him. He came up one vote short of unanimous. I have no idea why one guy chose not to vote for him. I think that's absurd. Ichiro was a slam dunk candidate. He's going in. Anyone who has a vote or would want to vote would put him in. He is one of the best baseball players of all time. Other players on my list, I have CC Sabathia. I'll go through my players first, and then I'll go through, I guess, my reasons for them. I got into Ichiro, so I have Ichiro Suzuki, who I think is a slam dunk candidate. CC Sabathia, who pitched for the Yankees for many years and just found ways to win a bunch of games. Billy Wagner pitched a little bit with the Mets, but more known for the Astros, pitching for the Astros and the Braves. Hall of Fame level closer. He's 8th all time in saves. Just a phenomenal relief pitcher, and he's a lot lower career ERA than a lot of the other Hall of Fame relief pitchers and other closers that are way up there all time in saves. Andruw Jones, I think he's one of the better center fielders of all time, and just his stats pop off the chart. He was very dominant for a very short time. One of the best players in the game. Felix Hernandez, great, phenomenal pitcher for the Mariners. One of the best pitchers in the game. And if he played for a better team with a better offense, he easily gets to 200 wins. He won one Cy Young, but should have won more. I'll get to that in a second. Omar Vizquel, one of the very underrated defensive shortstops in the game. This guy's phenomenal. I have no idea why he doesn't get more love. Torrey Hunter, I think, is one of the better all-around players that just doesn't seem to get a ton of love when it comes to Hall of Fame talks. And even when he was still playing, when he was an older player, I remember looking at his stats all the time and just being amazed at his accolades as well as his stats. And just the fact that, this guy has had a very accomplished career. Even if he isn't a Hall of Famer, even a lot of people don't think he's a Hall of Famer, what he has been able to accomplish and do in his career is phenomenal. And I've just always appreciated that about Torrey. And, I think that he should be a Hall of Famer for it. Jimmy Rollins, shortstop for the Phillies for many years, and as a Mets fan, it pains me to say it, but I do think Jimmy Rollins is a Hall of Famer. Francisco Rodriguez, another Hall of Fame level closer who actually has more career saves than Billy Wagner, and he doesn't seem to get much love either when it comes to Hall of Fame talks. And then I had to throw on my Hall of Fame ballot David Wright, who is the Mets' best position player all time. He holds many of the Mets' career records. His nickname is Captain America. He was the last Mets captain. Phenomenal player, phenomenal career with the Mets, holds many Mets records. And even though he might not be quite Hall of Fame level, I personally would give him a vote just to keep him on the ballot for another year. Because if you don't know, with the National Baseball Hall of Fame, you have to keep 5% of the vote, or get 5% of the vote in any year, or you fall off the ballot. So I would vote for him just to keep him on the ballot. I think I would love to see him get more consideration, but I understand why people don't vote for him, and that is because of his injuries that derailed the end of his career. But surely if injuries didn't affect his career, or if he had less injuries, especially the spinal stenosis that ended up ending his career, if he doesn't have that, he's well on track to more than likely be a Hall of Famer and get close to 3,000 career hits. And it was just very unfortunate the way his career ended. And then there's a couple players also on this list that I want to talk about that I feel like were maybe close for me, that I think should get consideration, but I maybe personally wouldn't vote for. That is Bobby Abreu, who I think, just go look at his stats, the amount of stolen bases he has, the career hits he has. I think he's someone who should get more consideration. I maybe wouldn't personally vote for him. And especially since I have 10 players already listed, you can only vote for 10 players for the Hall of Fame. That is the rules on the ballot. I wish it was more, but the rules are what they are. Bobby Abreu, I think, is someone who deserves more consideration, who should get more votes. It's just unfortunate that he hasn't. I believe this was his last year on the ballot. Then after that, it's up to the Veterans Committee to maybe put him in. I think also the fact that he kind of played with several different teams and just wasn't one of these big name players like a David Wright or Ichiro or Felix Hernandez. Like, I feel like that kind of hurts him a little bit too, that he was always not the star player on any of the teams he was on. He was just a really good player. So I think that hurts him, but I do think he should get more consideration. Carlos Beltran, if he goes in, he would go in as a Met more than likely, or a Kansas City Royal, but I think more than likely a Met, considering that he spent some of his better years with the Mets. He nearly took the Mets to the World Series in 2006 with David Wright, and he is currently working for the Mets. He was actually hired by the Mets to be manager until the Astros cheating scandal broke, and that is why I am not voting for him, as well as why I think other people aren't voting for him. Even though he's close to getting in, I think he likely will, and maybe he still should. But the fact that he played a major role in the Astros cheating scandal, I think that kind of hurts it. Sorry, my hat is a little off kilt. I think the role that he played in the Astros cheating scandal being a big part of it, I think that hurts him in his Hall of Fame consideration, and I personally would question whether I would vote for him or not. Also, considering a lot of these guys who I did have on my list have been on the Hall of Fame ballot for a while, and I feel like they should at least get voted in before I decide to vote for Carlos Beltran, who maybe has some things in his closet that are unsavory, that are not great looks for him, being involved with the cheating scandal with the Astros and perhaps with the Yankees or some other team, because it was quoted that the player who devised the system or came up with the idea, which we now know it was Carlos Beltran more than likely, said that it came from being with another team that he had previously played for. So it was likely the Yankees or Cardinals. It could have been the Mets back in the day, but the fact that we've not heard anything about that, and also those Mets teams outside of 2006 didn't make the playoffs, I don't think that it was the Mets. If it was the Mets, man, the Mets are really bad at cheating, that they were just not better than they were. I think more than likely it probably came from either the Yankees, even though they would argue against that, or the Cardinals. But that's a topic for another time, what that team was. But we very much know that Carlos Beltran was that player who was very key in that cheating scandal. So to me, I think that hurts his consideration for the Hall of Fame. I'm just going to briefly go through some of the players through the players that I mentioned and why I would vote for them. I've already mentioned Ichiro, great player, just slam dunk candidate. All of his hits, his stolen bases, his defense, phenomenal player. And if he had played in MLB earlier, he could have competed maybe for the all-time hits record. CC Sabathia, his accolades include a Cy Young win, 6-time All-Star. He won the 2009 World Series with the Yankees, and he was ALCS MVP that same year. He had 251 career wins to 161 losses. A 3.74 ERA is kind of high, but the fact he has so many wins, he helped the Yankees win a World Series, their last World Series that they won. And he led the league in wins twice, in both of those with the Yankees. He led the league in games started twice, he led the league in complete games twice, and led the league in shutouts 4 times and innings pitched once, as well as strikeout to walk ratio twice. He was runner-up in Rookie of the Year, 6-time All-Star. He got some MVP votes in various years, and he also finished, I should mention, he had 4 other seasons in which he finished top 5 in the Cy Young. He finished 5th once, 3rd once, and he finished 4th twice, as well as winning it back in 2007. I think he's done enough to be in the Hall of Fame, and 250 wins, especially in this era, there's not many more of those guys around. I think he deserves to get in. Let's see, what player did I say next? Billy Wagner. Billy Wagner, he is a 7-time All-Star, and he won the Rolaids Relief Pitcher of the Year once. He has a 2.31 ERA, which is one of the lower ERAs of any relief pitcher that is in the Hall of Fame or is up there all-time in saves. It's a lot lower than some of those guys that are already in the Hall of Fame. So I think he's deserving of getting in. 422 career saves. It ranks 8th all-time on the all-time saves list, and I'll mention some of those guys that are ahead of him. Of the 7 guys that are in front of him, 3 of them are Hall of Famers: Mariano Rivera, Trevor Hoffman, and Lee Smith. Hoffman and Rivera are often called the 2 best closers of all time. Rivera is without a doubt the best closer of all time, and both of those guys have over 600 saves. Lee Smith is another guy that he's 3rd all time, 478 career saves, very much a Hall of Famer. 2 of those guys are still playing, Kenley Jansen and Craig Kimbrell, who I think both will make the Hall of Fame at some point for their dominance. Jansen for just being as good as he has for how long he has, and Craig Kimbrell for a stretch with the Braves looked like he was unhittable. Like that he was, and I remember David Wright, the guy that I think that I'm going to give a vote to later on. He actually hit a home run against him in a game. I remember that. And then you've got Francisco Rodriguez, who I also have on my Hall of Fame list that I think should go in. He is also ahead of Billy Wagner with 437. And John Franco, another former Met, is 7th all-time with 424 career saves. I think he deserves some more consideration as well. But there's at least, even if you don't think Franco and Rodriguez are Hall of Famers, Jansen, Kimbrell, Smith, Hoffman, and Rivera, that's pretty elite company. And he actually has slightly more career saves than Dennis Eckersley, who's at 9th. Billy Wagner's a Hall of Fame relief pitcher in my mind. Who's up next? We got Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones was a 5-time All-Star. He won 10 Gold Gloves, won a Silver Slugger, and he was Major League Player of the Year. Now, he comes up just short of 2,000 career hits with 1,933. He did hit 434 home runs as a center fielder, which is pretty rare company. His batting average of 254 is kind of low. But for a short stretch with the Atlanta Braves, he was one of the best players in the game. He was runner-up in MVP in 2005 when he led the National League in home runs with 51 RBI and RBIs with 128. He won 10 Gold Gloves at center field, which is a pretty elite company to be one of the best defensive center fielders of all time. Combined with his home run totals over a short span, I think he ought to go in, and he's gained momentum in voting. I think he will likely go in within a few years' time. Just his fall off at the end of his career is what has hurt him so far. Felix Hernandez, as I said earlier, he would surely be a Hall of Fame. He's still a Hall of Fame candidate, and I think he will likely go in at some point. But he would have likely gone in this year, his first year on the ballot, if he had 200 career wins. It's just an easy, nice, round milestone for the Hall of Fame to be able to look at and vote for that. So and he pitched on some bad Mariners teams. If he has a better offense around him on a better team, say he pitches on the Yankees with CC Sabathia in that same time, he surely has over 200 career wins. So he ends up with 169 wins, 136 losses, a 3.42 ERA. He won a Cy Young. He was a 6-time All-Star, and he won 2 ERA titles, something that Sabathia doesn't have. And the year in which he won the Cy Young, he was 13-12 with a 2.27 ERA. He led the league in ERA twice, led the league in wins once, games started twice, shutouts twice, and innings pitched once, as well as leading in WHIP once. He finished runner-up in the Cy Young 2 other times. One of them I think he clearly should have won in 2014 over Corey Kluber. He also finished 4th another time and finished 8th and 7th other times, as well as getting some MVP votes in some of those seasons. If he pitched on a better team, he surely has 200 career wins and would, I think, go in this year. I think he will go in at some point. I would give him one of my Hall of Fame votes. Omar Vizquel is another interesting player. Whoops, misspelt his name. I'm just going through Baseball Reference and listing off their accolades, so I'm having to pull them up one at a time. He is only a 3-time All-Star, which is very shocking, but he won 11 Gold Gloves while playing shortstop, second only in Gold Gloves to Ozzie Smith at the position. Ozzie Smith considered the best defensive shortstop of all time. My phone just spasmed. But Omar Vizquel has over 2,800 career hits, most players who get that amount of hits go in the Hall of Fame. I think there's only like a handful, and most of those guys have issues, either like Pete Rose or Alex Rodriguez with steroids, of why they're not in. He has a 272 career batting average. His on base percentage is low, but he has almost identical amount of walks to strikeouts, which is pretty rare. He has 2,800 hits, which is pretty elite company. And winning 11 Gold Gloves at the position of shortstop is pretty spectacular. There's not many guys at all who have that under their belt. I think what has hurt him is that he played for so many different teams. And like I mentioned earlier with Bobby Abreu, he was never a star on his teams, and he was only a three-time All-Star. He bounced around a lot, and he played a very long career, which allowed him to immense that hit total. I think that somewhat hurts him, but at the same time, I think he should be somewhat rewarded for being able to play that long. I think he should go in. 11 Gold Gloves is pretty spectacular, and if we're going to reward guys like Ozzie Smith for defense or Yadier Molina in the future for defense, why not reward Omar Vizquel for defense as well? I would have him as a Hall of Famer. The other guy I mentioned a while ago, Torrey Hunter, I think I've just been always amazed by this guy is such a well-rounded player, and I feel like he just never gets the credit for it. Five-time All-Star, 9 Gold Glove awards, and a 2-time Silver Slugger. So he's a good hitter and a good defensive player. His career batting average is only 277, but he has over 2,400 career hits, actually less than 50 hits away from 2,500. He was 2 doubles short of 500, which is a pretty rare milestone for a lot of hitters to get to 500 doubles. He had almost 1,300 career runs, almost 1,400 career RBIs. He was just short of 200 stolen bases. He won 9 Gold Gloves while playing outfield. Again, that's pretty rare company. Not many guys do that. Now, did he win some of them on reputation? Probably, but he made some spectacular plays, and he was very deserving of those. He also won some Silver Sluggers, winning 1 Silver Slugger when he was 37 with the Tigers. He was a great hitter and a great defensive player. He had 353 career home runs. I know that's not the 400 eye-popping like Andruw Jones, but 353 combined with 9 Gold Gloves is pretty spectacular, and I think is deserving of at least more consideration than he has gotten. I would vote for him. Jimmy Rollins, as a Mets fan, it pains me to mention him. Is him playing for the Phillies, one of our rivals. But he is a very accomplished player as well. He won an MVP. Somehow he was only a 3-time All-Star, which I think that hurts him a bit. But he won an MVP. He won the 2008 World Series with the Phillies. He won 4 Gold Gloves, a Silver Slugger, and he won a Roberto Clemente Award and that's for community service. He led the league in triples 4 times, led the league in stolen bases once. He has 470 career stolen bases, and that was one of the last few speedsters in the game because we haven't seen anyone hit those stolen base totals in a while. 264 career batting average and a 324 on base percentage is low. His OPS plus is under 100, which I think a lot of the advanced analytics people would frown upon. But he won 4 Gold Gloves. He won a Silver Slugger. He won an MVP. He finished 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting. He should have been an All-Star more times. And he played almost his entire career with the Phillies, helping them win their 2nd World Series title. While playing shortstop, I should mention. I think that he should go in. He also had over 500 career doubles, and he had 231 home runs, 936 RBIs, and over 1,400 career runs, as well as almost getting to 2,500 career hits again. I think it's a well-rounded career with a World Series win, with some Gold Gloves, Silver Slugger, and MVP. I think it's an all-around great career, and he should go in the Hall of Fame. Next on my list is Francisco Rodriguez. He did pitch for the Mets at a short time. He's a 6-time All-Star like Billy Wagner. He did win the 2002 World Series with the Angels, and he won 2 Rolaids Relief Pitcher Awards, as well as set the record for most saves in a season with 62 back in 2008 with the Angels. He led the league in saves 3 times with 45, 47, and 62, 430 career saves, which ranks him, what did I say a while ago that ranked him as? That is 6th all-time in career saves, and that is behind 3 Hall of Famers and 2 guys in front of him that will surely go in the Hall of Fame, as well as Billy Wagner 2 spots behind him in total saves, who is going in. Now, what hurts Francisco is he bounced around a lot more than some of those guys. He pitched for the Angels for quite a while, but then he was with the Mets, then the Brewers, then the Orioles, then back with the Brewers, then with the Tigers. But he was great at the beginning of his career and great at the end and managed to amass 437 career saves, 6th all-time. I think he deserves more consideration. I would vote for him for the Hall of Fame. His ERA, though, is a little higher for closers with 2.86 in today's era, but overall that's still a great ERA. His career amount of saves, I think he should go in at some point. And lastly, I want to talk about my guy, David Wright. David Wright was the face of the Mets. He was voted the face of MLB in 2013. That was really more of the Mets fans pushing for it. He was nicknamed Captain America, being the captain of America's World Baseball Classic team back in 2013. He also played in the 2009 edition with Team USA. He was a 7-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove winner, 2-time Silver Slugger winner, and he holds almost all Mets career records and hits, home runs. I'm sorry, I think home runs he's 4th now. Darryl Strawberry was ahead of him, and Pete Alonso just passed him, I think, this past year. He's all-time RBI leader, all-time hits leader, all-time runs leader, 296 career batting average. He holds a ton of career Mets records. He was the first player to home run at Citi Field. I think Pete Alonso has passed him now for most home runs at Citi Field. But he holds a ton of career Mets records, and if he didn't have his injury problems, and especially the spinal stenosis at the end of his career, he very well likely was going to go into the Hall of Fame and be considered one of the best third basemen of all time. He was on pace to get close to 3,000 career hits, if not get 3,000 hits. And he was considered one of the best third basemen in the game when he went out. He played his entire career with the Mets. He signed a contract that was going to make him a lifelong Met. Something very few players do nowadays is play their whole career with one team. He was going to do it with the Mets, being the face of MLB, captain of Team USA for the World Baseball Classic, holding all these Mets records, and very well likely going to have close to 400 career home runs, well over 1,000 RBIs, runs scored, and close to 3,000 career hits. I think that would have likely gotten him in. Even if he didn't get to those immense totals, several more All-Star appearances, I think he would eventually get in if he hadn't gotten injured. He was likely to get in. He was a great defensive and offensive player, and he was the face of the Mets. He was the face of the franchise. My favorite moment of his is still in the 2015 World Series. The Mets lost Game 3, him hitting the home run in that game. I still get goosebumps just thinking about it, but especially going and watching replays of it just gives me chills. I think I really don't know if he is an actual Hall of Famer. I think the injuries robbed him of a Hall of Fame career. But I would give him a vote just to keep him on the ballot so he would stay above the 5% and just get him more consideration. He is at least worthy of a hat off of getting to stay on the ballot several more years. And who knows, maybe one day he gets to go in because maybe a Veterans Committee puts him in one day or something for how great he was for a short time. I don't think he's going to go in. His number is being retired by the Mets later this year. Maybe I can make it up to that game. But he was my favorite player with the Mets, and it's hard for me not to give him a vote or a shout out. He's the last guy I would have on the list. Now, I want to briefly mention how the voting did go. So Ichiro came up one vote short of being unanimous with 99.7%. Excuse me. CC Sabathia also got voted in, as well as Billy Wagner. Sabathia got 86.8% of the vote, and Billy Wagner got 82.5%. You have to get 75% of the vote to go in. Carlos Beltran came up just short at 70% of the vote. Andruw Jones got 66% of the vote. I think Andruw Jones very well could go in next year or 2 years from now when it's his 10th and final year on the ballot. Chase Utley got only 39.8% of the vote. I would not vote for him. A-Rod and Manny got under 40% as well. The steroid users, Andy Pettit, 27%. Felix Hernandez only got 20% on his first ballot. I think that's going to come up in the following years. Jimmy Rollins got only 18% of the vote. Omar Vizquel only 18% of the vote. I should also mention with Vizquel, he was accused of, I believe, sexual assault or domestic violence or something several years ago. I don't remember exactly what he was accused of. I don't know if there was ever a trial or anything, but I'm sure that also hurts his case. Dustin Pedroia only got 11.9% of the vote. Francisco Rodriguez, 10.2%. David Wright, his second year on the ballot, has 8.1%, staying above the 5% threshold. And Torii Hunter, the guy I really would like to get in, only has 5.1% of the vote, just staying on the ballot. Down in the realm of players that didn't get very many votes that fell off the ballot is Ian Kinsler, Russell Martin, Brian McCann, Troy Tulowitzki, Curtis Granderson, Adam Jones, Carlos Gonzalez. And the three guys getting no votes, which was surprising, was Hanley Ramirez, Fernando Rodney, and Ben Zobrist of all people. Like, Ben Zobrist had a very accomplished career. I would at least think that he would get close to 5%, winning back-to-back World Series with the Royals and the Cubs. You know, and he had a very accomplished career, great career. Unfortunately, not a Hall of Famer for him, but great career. And I want to mention also the Hall of Fame class, because there were two players who were voted in by the Veterans Committee that I think are worthy of being mentioned in this video as well, because they're going in the Hall of Fame. So the three guys that got voted in by the voters were Ichiro Suzuki, CC Sabathia, and Billy Wagner. And the two guys voted in by the Veterans Committee that will go in with those guys this summer is Dick Allen, who played first base for the Phillies and White Sox back in the 60s and 70s. He unfortunately passed away not long ago. I believe it was a couple years ago where he passed away. He's unfortunately passed away, so getting to go in the Hall of Fame just shortly after passing away is always sad. And Dave Parker, who I think is very deserving of the Hall of Fame, if I can get his stats pulled back up. Misspelled his name. Dave Parker. So Dave Parker was an MVP, a 7-time All-Star, Home Run Derby champ, 2-time World Series champ, 3-time Gold Glove, 3-time Silver Slugger, 2-time batting title champ, and he was also All-Star MVP. And I should remind you that Major League Baseball's All-Star game is a lot, and not only winning MVP in that is a lot more deserving than the NBA or Pro Bowls MVP, because the players actually try in baseball's All-Star game. There's a lot on the line. There used to be fights all the time in the game. And it still means something today. It's not quite to the level that it once was, but it still means quite a bit. He led the league in hits once, doubles twice, getting over 500 career doubles, 27 career 100 hits, over 300 career home runs, nearly 1,500 RBIs, over 1,200 runs scored. Career batting average of 290, led the league in batting average twice, slugging twice, OPS once, and total bases 3 times, as well as intentional walks twice. He was an MVP, runner-up another time for MVP, and finished top 5 in the MVP vote 5 times. Just an all-around great career for Dave Parker. I've mentioned several times before, not on this channel, but I've mentioned before that I think he probably should be a Hall of Famer. And Dick Allen is a more interesting case. Talking with my dad, who remembers him play a little bit, he often has said that Dick Allen was a guy that was a great player, but wasn't well loved by a lot of people, especially the media, because he rubbed them the wrong way. He got in trouble a lot and suspended a lot. So there was a lot of people that thought that he hurt his team more than help it, but he was a great home run hitter for his career. He led the league in home runs twice, RBIs once, triples once, led the league in runs once. He also led the league in strikeouts twice and was one of the early players who struck out a ton while trying to hit home runs. He led the league in on-base percentage twice, slugging 3 times, OPS 4 times, and total bases once, as well as having leading the league in OPS plus 3 times, but that wasn't a stat that was kept back then. He won Rookie of the Year and MVP and was a 7-time All-Star. Now, I will mention, though, that I personally don't know if I would vote Dick Allen for the Hall of Fame if I could vote for him. I think his stats career-wise, and I did a comparison before I did this video because I wanted to make sure that I was right on this. His career stats are very similar to Matt Holliday's. I don't mean disrespect to Dick Allen. I love Matt Holliday and think he should get more consideration for the Hall of Fame. But I think both of them, in my opinion, are maybe more borderline Hall of Famers rather than someone that I would necessarily vote for. But I do think both of them deserve consideration. They both have great career stats. Both of them over 300 career home runs, over 1,000 RBIs, over 1,000 runs scored. Holliday has the edge in runs scored and RBIs and hits, as well as batting average. They have a similar on-base percentage, but Allen has the more home runs, slugging percentage, OPS, and OPS plus, as well as having an MVP and Rookie of the Year that Matt Holliday doesn't have. But their stats, other than that, are pretty close on a lot of things. And Allen actually only has 40 more home runs than Matt Holliday while playing a similar length career. So I think both of those are players that deserve to be I think both of them deserve consideration for the Hall, but in my mind, they're very similar players, at least looking at their stats. Now, Holliday was an outfielder, while Allen was a first baseman primarily, but is playing third base and left field some as well. But still, congratulations to Dick Allen and his family. I'm sure they're very excited that he's getting to go in. Unfortunately, he did pass away, so he won't he doesn't get to see himself go in the Hall of Fame. That's always very sad when that happens, but I'm happy he is getting to go in. He is a deserving player, and Dave Parker is a very deserving player. That's all I have for this video. I know it's run a little long. Let me know your thoughts down below, who you think should go in baseball's Hall of Fame, who shouldn't go in. Did you like my list? Who would you put in? Let me know down below, and maybe in a future video I will talk about how I would fix the Hall of Fame voting. I think there's some issues with it, but I would like to talk about that in another video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.